All right, I believe we're live. This is going to be a great show. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got Dr. Josh Henk, chiropractor, but not a normal chiropractor. Although it's been a real treat as I've done the podcast. I've met some great practitioners that have multiple modalities, multiple disciplines under the same roof. I know that takes some real effort, but I also know that the potential for healing is so much greater with all of the different disciplines that you're working with. So to start with, what I'd really like to know to start is how you got to this point. What got you on this path to healing?
It starts with the introduction that you kind of gave me. You're like, he's a chiropractor, but he's kind of more than that. And I've really kind of suffered with this bit of an identity crisis, if you will, as a human being. Growing up, I grew up in two distinct backgrounds. I went to church on Sunday and a mosque on Friday. And I had two very distinct philosophies. I know, right? And I thought I was a wolf in sheepskin the whole time, right? As you could imagine. And as I got older, I started to realize, I was placed there for some purpose. Like I didn't choose that, right? The family I was born into, or maybe I did in a previous life and I just forgot about it, right? Ultimately, I started to realize that I was placed there and I had to make the best of my situation. And I found myself, as most of us do, running from a lot of my fears and running from the unknown. And even though I went to church on Sunday and the mosque on Friday, I grew up in a divorced family. My mom raised 5 kids on her own. And my father was very present, but he was always trying to get a higher education and trying to do better with his own life as an immigrant from a different country. And so even with all this direction that I had from my spiritual side, I really never felt the power, if you will. And I got into pre-med. My dad wanted me to do this, get into pre-med, or engineering or something like that. I guess it's like a big foreigner joke, right? And that's not really what I excelled at. I was really just this artist. I got into pre-med at Wayne State University here in Michigan, and I decided to stop doing that. And I secretly took some art classes. And I was always good at art. And I entered into College for Creative Studies, and I had a really nice scholarship there. So I went there for about 10 months. And I ran into the same type of, I don't know if you call it scrutiny, but at the time, I didn't like it, a friction with my professors to where they were telling me how to do things. And I was feeling like art was an expression of more of what's within. So they were trying to give me this identity, again, what an artist is. And it's like the simple fact that they give you grades for artistry is a bit of taboo, And then now I realize, well, they were just trying to refine me. I just had to get my degree and move on. Then I could do what I wanted to do. But I ran from it. I ran from that. And I ran from that with my father when he told me what to do. And I wanted to do my own thing, right? So this was a familiar theme. As I got older, luckily, I had a lot of teachers and mentors help me to become just a more aware human being. It's not about right and wrong. It's about awareness. Because awareness allows you to move forward in spite of, not because of what has happened to you. And it really allows the situation to still exist. But when you give credit and you say, well, my father was this way, so that because of him, I'm this way, it really gives him the credit for being who you are. And the ego doesn't really like that, but the ego also likes to have power too. So there's no harm in me looking back at my mentors, being the way that they were and understanding that now who I've become as an artist and a doctor. I've had 2 in 1 as a chiropractor, right? And someone who connects the physical body with the spiritual body. I've been able to take all of my identities and put them together into who I am now today. So when people don't know how to introduce me, it's flattering. I love it. I love it and this is my chiropractor, my psychologist, my nutritionist, my friend. This is Josh. I don't know. This is Todd. Get to know him. And I love that, because that's something that a lot of chiropractors have a hard time breaking is this mold, this identity, or this allopathic doctor. This has to be this way. Hey, there's standards of care, but, it all comes from authenticity. So I was told in school, if you have long hair, a beard, piercings, if you're not wearing a nice button-up shirt with a tie and some nice shoes, that you're not going to be successful in what you do.
I
You
guess you
want to
broke that rule. And it worked out all
broke that
right?
rule. I used to have earrings too, so I actually have since taken the earrings out. But I wear toe shoes I don't wear nice shoes. I mean, I think they're nice, but they're good for you. They're functional. I wear whatever I feel comfortable in because I want to be authentic. And I feel like when you show up authentic to the world, authenticity shows up to you. And that's a part of how I operate the wellness center and how I've grown is just by showing up and giving the world who I am. And I think that's really our purpose is to really show up and give the world who I am. And that's how I met my wife. She sat next to me, and if it wasn't for her, I may not have passed a couple classes. I always make that joke, but she's very smart, and through experience, we've really just gotten into family health because her and I didn't necessarily have the best upbringing in terms of health, and it wasn't really anybody's fault. It was just we were doing the best we had, and now we just want to break the mold and do something different for our children. And now we have Transcendence Family Wellness Center, which assists our community in becoming the best versions of themselves by identifying scientifically through our research and diagnostic center what is interfering with the body's ability to heal the tissue cells, right? The body has the potential to heal, but something's getting in the way. So we're obsessed with the science, which is doing everything we can to give you the evidence so that you can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can touch it kind of thing. You can see the biochemistry, the radiology, ultrasounds, biofeedback, thermography. We want you to be able to see every perspective of your health so we can identify what's getting in the way of that river flowing at ease and what's creating dis-ease in your body. So there's so many principles rooted, and like we talked about, why would you do a real estate podcast? And because we talk about principle, and principle is linked to everything. With my people, we talk about entrepreneurship operates the way the nervous system does, the way let's say, the traffic flows, a car operates is very mechanical. The body's got mechanical ideologies. It really doesn't matter what you do. There's principle to how chiropractic works and really how the body works. So you just trust in principles like gravity, and then you can move with confidence. So that's for me. I just show up and have fun. And I know the principles I work with are going to show up for me when I'm having fun. And I'm doing the things scientifically that I need to do. And I don't have a bias, an insurance company telling me what to do, what not to do. We just take care of people how they need to be taken care of, like people.
Sounds more like the art of practicing rather
Yeah.
than the checklist or the regimented practice. I've got MD buddies that I work with, and they're a little frustrated because these days, most of their practice is really the 4 Ps. That's what I tell them when I'm teasing them. Poke, prod, prescribe, and push them out the door because they've got to get on to the next patient. And it's unfortunate because there's not a lot of satisfaction in that model. You're not going to spend time. You don't get to know the patient, and I think you miss out on some of the, well, we might call it woo-woo stuff. At least that's what one of my consultants told me. Don't get into the energy stuff. Don't talk about the mental stuff. That's woo-woo, and it doesn't really matter. And it matters.
Yeah.
It really matters. With our company, we're in the pain space. We talk
Yeah.
about pain things, and how we're feeling, how we're thinking, how we're processing emotionally directly correlates with how the pain's going to manifest. And I know that personally from all of my surgeries, all of my traumas. If I'm not right mentally, I hurt more. So
Yeah, that's something I was talking about today with somebody, Todd, is nothing happens in the body without it first occurring in the mind, right? And we look at like energy work or mental work or the thought process that emotions and feelings can affect our body's health. But that is actually how it works. That is the most practical thing ever. If you have any movement, all of this conversation is first happening here. Any reaction in the body first occurs in the mind. That is the most practical place to start is the mind, the nervous system, and how it stems outward, and looking at pain as perhaps a tool, an indicator of what's happening underneath, not criticizing it like the crying baby that you don't understand, but actually working with it and trying to understand it and find out why are you in pain,
yeah, I saw on your social media you did something interesting. This is more the mental, spiritual thing. This guy's retreat to Costa Rica.
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish there? I know what you said online. I just want to hear it again because it's fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many different ways of saying it, but essentially I've developed 7 steps that it takes to help men uncover the type of weapon that they truly are inside, help them to kind of gain this ancestral memory back when they created this whole plan of life and they just forgot it, right? So essentially these 7 steps help you to become the sharpest version of yourself and allow you to master the power of creation. Instead of becoming a weapon of mass destruction, we want you to become a weapon of mass creation. So in simpler terms, it's the 7 steps every man must take in becoming the sharpest weapon to advance the power of their kingdom and become a weapon of mass creation, instead of a weapon of mass destruction, as most people have become, right?
Yeah, that's what social media and some other influences would have us be.
Yeah.
But we do need
Well,
to do something more positive.
yeah,
How
a lot
long?
of the male space is around being alpha or being this dominant force or, being this aggression. And that's what men have been chalked up to be. But men have so many more mentalities, like radio stations, and when we can uncover that as part of our identity and how our origin story, the first step is to understand, where does your metal come from? And when you uncover your origin story, you know where you're coming from, what type of metal you have to work with. You can then identify, based off of the battle plan, what type of weapon you need to put in the fire forge, hammer to spec, grind out, sharpen out, and then be tested upon. So those 7 steps that we go through, a bladesmith goes through in taking a hunk of iron, whether it be a rusty, hunky, railroad spike, or a brand new piece of iron. Us men, we come from different families and backgrounds, but iron is iron. We can all be melted down if we know what our plan is. And to be connected with that plan, we have to get with our brotherhood, and we have to get in the wilderness. For women, it's sisterhood and silence. For men, it's brotherhood and wilderness. And when we're in the wilderness, we're going fishing with the boys, or we're with the boys. And what happens is we brush up on one another with our different personalities, and we learn from one another. And I always say to the kings that walk upon this earth alongside me, we call them kings walking. I always say that nothing else gives a man peace than knowing another man is struggling and still triumphing, getting back up. Like, nothing gives me peace. Like, even though you have a back massage, honey, this, hug, all this stuff, kids, all that stuff, you still go, man. And you look over at your boy, and he's just getting ripped to shreds, and he's just getting up, and he's just, closing deals, and he's taking care of his family. I'm like, he can do it. I can do it. So for me, I feel like the struggle is part of the forge, the fire, and we were made for it. We just forgot. And so life is, for us men, not about finding our purpose. It's about remembering it. And my job is to help you to go through these steps to rediscover the one you wrote when you were chilling up in the stands, watching the football game with your boys, saying, yo, if coach put me in, I would lock him down, right? And coach is like, oh yeah, you're up, Todd. And here you are. The deal is, when you come to Earth, you're going to forget everything you planned up in there. So you and your boys are writing a plan. Yep. Give it to me. Right? Go to Earth. You're going to forget. He's like, I'm not going to forget, coach. We'll see, Todd. And there comes Todd, trying to find his purpose in the world. Is trying to get you to see that you need to find your purpose, and trying to tell you what your purpose is, give you an identity, right? Career day. That's why I speak at Career Day for kids. I tell kids to get in the profession of happiness. Number 1, get in the profession of happiness. I talk about chiropractic too. It's cool. But I first talk about happiness and how happy I am as a human being. And then I ask people, what do I do for a living? And then they give me things like, you're a comedian, you're a behavioral analyst, you work with the body, you're a motivational speaker, you're some kind of doctor. And I'm like, I'm all of those things, you guys. I'm a chiropractor, but I came to Career Day. I'm here, to answer your question, Todd. I'm like, what do I do? Well, I'm a comedian. I'm a behavioral analyst. I work with neurology. I'm a motivational speaker, inspirational speaker, like Tony Robbins, one of the students would say. These are all the answers I got recently, 2 weeks ago at a Career Day. What is my identity? Identity is happiness. It doesn't matter what you do, whether it's real estate or anything. So I love talking about a lot of different things. You talk about the 4 P's in medicine. I talk about the 3 M's. Maintain, monitor, and manage, right? Maintain you, monitor you, and manage your disease. There's no C's. The only C in medicine is, the word, not cure. So it becomes a really powerful tool to use principle. And, I'm excited that you had me here to share these principles with you and a little bit about what we do. How do you feel that you fit into some of what I shared?
Well, in quite a few different ways. As far as what you just shared, the mental, emotional side is always a battle, particularly for men, because we get into school, which is regimented. We get into a career, often regimented, and we forget aspects of our own personality. We
Yes.
become the job rather than the well-rounded person. And it can be pretty lonely to be the job because, like you said, when we struggle, if we can see others, other comrades, friends, buddies, fishing buddies, hunting buddies, whatever, and see their struggles, there's a lot of unity, a lot of building that comes from that. But if we're just focused on the career, the job, and we're isolated from our buddies, it's not healthy. In fact, it's a pretty lonely place to be. And I've been there chapters in my life, times where I've been so focused. I've been the job, I've been the career, I've been the whatever. And that's not a great place. It's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah. It's really been condemned lately for men to take rests, and we, to the point where when we do rest or we chill, we feel guilty. We're like, but doing nothing is doing
Yeah, that's
something,
me.
right? Like guilty as charged all day.
Oh, yeah. Grew up on a farm, but you weren't working, something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I've had to work on that. My wife is still my therapist. We're still working on it.
I don't think that's ever going to stop. That's part of transcendence, it's a process. It's not a destination. And we've been in the world, we've also glorified the grind. And the grind is phase 5 of the forging process. Is where most men die, actually. They get stuck at phase 5, never getting to phase 6 or 7. Phase 5 is the grind. Getting a blade sharp, you have to get it ground down, but you have to get out of the grind at some point and start, as I say, teaching what you've learned. So I believe every man at age 33 has done enough physical labor on this earth, as our Lord has, is to the point where now we can teach. So let's say you're a carpenter. You're a carpenter for 33 years. You're done. Now you teach something about carpentry to other carpenters. Open up that space for new carpenters. Don't hold that space. That's selfish. Number 2, now you can teach. Now you can bring more people into that space. That's really what I've been trying to do, is get out of the hands-on work. I could have stayed there and mastered it forever, but that's taking away from the levels that we already need to achieve as in humanity. So now I want to get into teaching, getting to where I'm at, and I'm getting out of the grind. I want to learn how to, as we all do, make what we make in 40 hours a week in 4 hours. How do you do that? How do you leverage that? So we got to get out of the grind. We got to stop glorifying hard work and the grind. That's part of it. But at some point, you keep grinding yourself down. You'll grind yourself down to your wit's end. And in order to sharpen your weapon, you need to have grit. And so I always say, ground with wit, sharpened with grit. Ground with wit, sharpened with grit. If you want to get a weapon sharp, you got to use grit. If you want to grind a weapon down, you got to use your wit. But you can make $1 million grinding your body down to its wit's end. I've seen it, 80 hours a week, and nothing to show for it. All sickness and disease, being a victim of the disability world or the Medicare world and all of that. No, I want men to get out of the grind and into the sharpening phase. And it's by banding with your brothers, coming together, creating guilds and groups. It's not about joining one and keep making one bigger, because these guilds don't want to be bigger. That's not the goal. The goal is to have many small guilds so that we can all pool money together. We'll all buy a plane together, right? We want to get on the warship together. That's the battle plan. We got to get on the warship, not the warship. Yes, God calls us to warship, but he's like, come on, my people, would you get up on the warship and fight for my kingdom? Quit just all hail me,
I
Do you want
gotta
your
get to work.
kids to hail you and worship you as a father? Or do you want them to get up and go to work with what you taught them? Yes, that gives you glory. That's what you're happy about. So that's what God calls us to do. I call it the worship versus the worship. The view versus the pew. Oh, what do you want? Because God's in the view. He's also in the pew. Choose. You could be at the top of the mountain worshiping the Lord, and you could be at the pew. I'm not judging you. I prefer the view as opposed to the pew, right? And that's quite all right. That's where I've learned that God's in the wilderness, in the view. That's where I see him. I am the light. Hey, that's what he said. Right? I really see that God gave us 3 paths to salvation, not one. No, but he said it. He said, I am the light and the way. And people were like, oh, so you're the light and the way? No offense to anybody who believes that Jesus was the light and the way. That's great, because that's one of the 3 paths. But I am, if you can live in the great I am. If you can understand that the purpose is the I am, to offer the most authentic version of yourself in the here and now at all times, the I am. That's the path to salvation. And there's so much theology behind that. Number 2, the light. Look at the sun. Look at how it gives life to everything. Look at Jesus, his life, how he gave life to everything. Jesus' life was a representation of how the neurology moves. 3, you have 33 vertebrae, 33 years before the top vertebrae, the atlas bone, what we call the mouth of God, the gateway to heaven in China, right? That nerve signal moves through the 33rd vertebrae into the brain, right? Where it's crucified on the cruciform ligament at the base of the skull. So as a chiropractor, I've learned more about...
Is that where the name cruciform ligament came from?
Yeah, it's called cruciform ligament. It's a cross sitting at the base of your skull, protecting the top 2 vertebrae. Now, the atlas vertebrae is named after the Greek god Atlas, right? Because a lot of our bones are named from Latin and Greek. So they named it the Greek god Atlas. And who knows what came first? Maybe they were trying to preserve the Scientology of upper cervical in the story of Atlas, or maybe the story of Atlas was a good name to give Atlas because it was literally the same thing. The story of Atlas, Greek mythology, as he loses his grip on the earth, the tilt is off, and then sickness ensues. But as Atlas gets his grip back on the earth, it takes it off its tilt, and then the earth goes back into harmony. That's the same concept of getting your head on straight. When the atlas bone, the most important bone in your body, gets put back in alignment, your brainstem can function more effectively because that's where your brainstem, heart, lungs, liver, digestion come from. When that atlas, when your head is on straight, when that screw is not loose and it's tightened up, when your head is flowing with ease, not dis-ease, the Holy Spirit heals the body. So I look at chiropractic, it taught me it reconnected everything in my life through art and what I was learning with Da Vinci and why all these artists portrayed Jesus with his hands around people's neck. Jesus was a chiropractor. He knew where the base of the skull, he knew the source of life came from the base of the skull. Almost every miracle that Jesus has ever performed, with the exception of one miracle, and as far as we know, every miracle that has been performed by Jesus has been performed by a chiropractor. There's been a story of it being performed by a chiropractor, except for bringing a dead person back to life. Now, the chiropractors could probably try, and maybe it'll freaking happen. Who knows, right? I've had stories of people redlining chiropractors, and their heart stopped. They give them an adjustment, and it turns back on. So heck, maybe they did bring them back to life, right? So whatever this may be, whatever the identity is, let's not think about that, but let's go back to I am, which is live in the moment, the light. Look at the sun. If you see the miracle of the sun and how it gives life, right? My Father who art thou in heaven. The sun is, well, what does the sun revolve around? So the sun is the universe's only begotten son. It's the only one we got. It's the one that gives us life. If you just look at life, look at the sun, look at Jesus' life. It could be through chiropractic. It could be quite literally looking at the sun or through the Bible and its demonstration of how Jesus gave life to where he spread his word, right? And then he said the way. I am the light and the way. The way was the Tao, right? The way is the Tao. The oldest religion known to humanity is the Tao. Well, what's the way? It's the way. As soon as you think you're not on the way, you're not on the way. If you're on the way, you're on the way. What's the way? The way. But then you get snagged. I'm not on the way. Okay, why not? And so you got to find a way to be on the way. And then if you do that, you're living in the moment. You're living in the I am. Right? And then you're constantly, the light. You're looking for light. You're looking for energy in Nikola Tesla. If you think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration, you will understand the laws of the universe, right? So all these people, we all talking about the same thing here, right? And so that's where I love for men to get to this realization that, they have this purpose, and that's is to, again, to be their most optimal, authentic self. And there's different levels. That's about becoming a sharp weapon. I have a second book that's about men becoming a strong, like getting their health up. So having strong armor to go to battle with, not just a strong weapon, but how men should get their armor strengthened. And then my third book is going to be, and these are already starting the process of being written. The third book is how men strengthen their shields, which are the relationships with their 3 to 5 best friends that they have in their life that are protecting the kinks in their armor and the vulnerabilities that their weapons cannot possess. So now, after reading all 3 books, the men will be possessed with sharp blade, strong armor, and the relationships with the men that they have will be built. And we invite them to experience the curriculum in action in Costa Rica, in Italy, whether it be the Philippines, somewhere, Hocking Hills, Ohio, or the various other places that we plan on continuing to do them. Ultimately, there's a fourth book, which is the legacy. And it's like, what are you fighting for? And it's like, so it becomes this, along the way, you write your origin story, it becomes this book of your life that you write and you share with people how you become the man that you are. And ultimately, that's what you give out at your eulogy. It's like, here's my book, man. Read about me.
What's the schedule on publishing the first book?
The first book's going to be done by June 6th, my birthday, in the new year. It's already done. I've ran about 3.5 retreats because we did a mini retreat. We did 3 retreats already with the book and the curriculum, so I have enough feedback. What's cool is the book is built out of a mastermind. So the idea is I've taken a lot of the answers and the advice that the men have contributed to the structure. I created a structure and I let the men fill in the ideas as they came. And so I took note of all these ideas that the men were giving me. And so now I just have to add a lot more from the last retreat, and that'll be the final contribution to the book. And the book is technically written by all the men, that I ran the experience with. It took 2.5 years, though, to run the men through the experience so that I could have a book that was honest and wasn't just some idea that Dr. Josh wrote up, in 2 weeks, because I literally busted it out in 2 weeks, but I was working on it nonstop. I was just channeling it. And, now it's just about getting it published. And my format is going to be more of a curriculum. It's going to be not just like this, everybody can get it, at least for right now. A book, we might create a smaller handbook, like a, 50-page or 100-page handbook, but this is going to be more of a manual of life for men to get into with their brothers and share with them, so that when they're struggling, their brothers can be like, man, it sounds like you need to get more in get back in the forge, man. You got a crack developing, and the only way you got to get it back in the fire and melt that back through. And so you got to get with the action, adventure, and approval. You got to go out fishing, got to go on a family vacation, and you got to go to a boxing ring and just get some of that aggression out and get into the fight a little bit. When you do those things, your fire comes back, man. Your fire comes back, and you're ready to go again. Because I see men suffering from addiction, men suffering from suicide, men suffering from depression, more than anything. And I'm seeing women having to step up in their place. Women are my predominant clients. Why? How come men don't care about their health? Why is that? Why is that something? Why is that? That's stupid. Why? So I
Question.
mean, I understood the psychology of it. I know why, but
We
why
see
do
the
you think that is,
same
Todd?
for the stuff we do. Most of our clientele, I bet it's 75-80% women, maybe even higher. Just more in
Yeah,
tune, more proactive. Men do need to step up a bit.
yeah,
The cowboy up idea is great. In fact, one of my childhood heroes is John Wayne over there on the wall. I've got a great big John Wayne picture, but that's for the tough short-term day, the short-term week. I can't model my life around cowboying up. I've
yeah.
got to be a little more complete than that. In fact, a lot more complete than just that attitude of cowboy up and gut it out.
Yeah,
Got to do better.
it's hard to pick yourself up by your own bootstraps,
Yeah.
Like,
Especially for more than a
how do you do that? Pick
day or
yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like, wait a minute.
yep.
How do you do that? It's like kind of a paradox. And it's like, wait, if you actually think about it, it's like, wait, it means ask for help, you big dummy. Because but nobody's going to come help you unless you ask, because everybody wants to be wanted. I want to be wanted. I want you to want me. Right.
It's true.
And in healthcare, I've observed this, now is let's get over figuring out what's wrong with people now. Now, if you do the testing properly, you'll know exactly what's going on with people. You can write the exact plan that people need to follow. The upsetting part, Todd, is that the people won't follow it. And I don't know if it's like it's out of trauma, it's a discipline, and they're too distracted, they don't have time, they don't have whatever excuses are. But we've gotten over the hump of, does it work? Are you sure? Like, now, forget about that. That's not the conversation. I moved on to trying to connect with people on what they value most, because they're going to do this plan that I know is going to work for them, and something's going to sabotage them again, If they don't have a clear-cut answer as to why they're here on this earth, well, then why do they want to be healthy? What's the point of being healthy? They just rather be happy, right? And we know happiness is good for our health. We know that is, but that's not the only ingredient to health. There's so many more realities. to health and just happiness.
On the health side, I've noticed a couple of things from your website and Facebook. And first, I've noticed certainly respect, almost a reverence for the body's power to heal, for a greater power to heal. And it's your job to just get things in the right place, to get things where they belong. And then the other thing I've noticed is you gather a lot of data.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of analyzing. You're doing the hard work behind the medicine, behind the magic.
Yeah.
And it's not nearly as common as it should be. There's too much, it's not even quite diagnosing. We're trying to jump to a quick answer with a lot of practitioners instead of doing the hard work. I noticed you do deep blood work, microbiome work, body scans, thermography. Why such a push? Why the
Well,
data? I know
well,
I know why I like the data. I have to have as much as I can gather. Then higher power can fill in the gaps for me, but I feel like I've got to do the legwork.
I think it comes from trauma, from honestly, and I'm okay with it. Like, I don't like being wrong. I don't like to be wrong. And well, it's good. Like, we're not talking about like drywall here. We're talking about people. We're talking about a human being. We're not even talking about Ferrari. We're talking about a human being here. So I think it's good to be nitpicky and measure twice, measure thrice, measure twice, cut once, right? Measures many times. And you mentioned the hard work. That's what the protocol is called. It's called the hard way for doctors. And I teach dentists, chiropractors, medical doctors, physical therapists, health coaches, how to develop a scientific strategy within their scientific means and licensure. If not, they can associate with me, get the testing done through me, and then I will send them a cumulative report. And then you could take care of the person however you want. And now you know exactly what's going on with them. So now you know what they need. And all you got to do is relay the message. Hey, this is what the team of doctors say at Henk Research and Diagnostic. They did things the hard way, so you can do it the easy way, right? And it's a cliche, but so many people shy away from the hard way. But HARD, we could call it the Human Analysis Research and Development. Diagnostic is di means two. I've been split my whole life in two. Agnostic is no definite belief, but when you have two angles, you have one belief. And most of diagnostics in medicine, for example, diabetes, is just a slang term to use to clump a group of symptoms or realities on blood tests. As an example, if you go into a medical doctor and you're not diagnosed with anything, you have some blood work done, you say, hey, look, I'm having dry lips, I'm having frequent urination, weight gain, and I'm really tired, and I'm developing some sores on my skin. Okay, let's do some blood work. Maybe you got diabetes. Already they're starting the brainwashing, right? Oh, maybe you got diabetes. Okay, like they get something, right? And they're thinking like, oh, they're clumping it in their head, but they hurt you when they say that you actually have diabetes because it doesn't actually exist. And what happens is they'll do the blood work and they'll say, oh, your insulin's low, your sugar's high, your cholesterol's high, your DHEA is low, your estrogen's really, really high, your testosterone's low, your thyroid's off. Those are things that we know clinically that tell us you have insulin resistance and your A1C is high, so you have diabetes. Okay. But some people go in and they don't have all of those imbalances and they still say, well, you have diabetes, right? But no, you don't have diabetes. You have all of those imbalances I just told you. So, okay, but diabetes is incurable. Well, yeah, because they made it up. So if you made up a mythical character that was unkillable, it's unkillable. You made it up. It can be. So they made up a disease, which is just a group of diagnostics that are out of balance. And they said, well, those groups, when you get 5 out of these 10, you have diabetes. Okay. And they say, yeah, we can't cure it unless you're in the medical profession, right? And in medical profession, curing diabetes is so rare. Otherwise, it would be so available, right? But you know what? When they say you can't cure diabetes, they're right. Anybody who says you can cure diabetes, they're wrong. It's true because they made it up. But what you can do is you can disqualify yourself for the mythical beast, right? You can get your sugar in check. There's a bunch of research on how to lower your glucose levels, fasting being one of them, right? Liver detoxing to get your cholesterol back in balance. 80% of your cholesterol is made in the body, not just diet, right? And cholesterol is a very important pre-hormone to make every other hormone in the body. So cholesterol is not bad for you. It's good for you.
Funny thing, we're stuffing patients full of statins and creating all kinds of fallout. because
Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia,
yeah,
30-year
because we
study found out that's what it causes.
vilified cholesterol, which is essential.
Yeah, well, now what happened is because we're starting to find this out, and the drug companies are going to get in trouble, like Lipitor got in trouble, right? Now they changed Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and this weird symptomatology because we created it with the statin drugs over years. They changed it to type 3 diabetes now. So they don't recognize Parkinson's as anything other than type 3 diabetes, which is insulin resistance in the
Interesting.
brain. But type 3 diabetes, what is it? It's high sugar, low insulin, toxic chemicals in the body. So the whole premise of curing diabetes, because we don't cure diabetes, right, is we don't even say you got diabetes in the first place. Like if you want to believe you got diabetes, that's what you got. I just say you got such and such syndrome. You have an inability to adapt because these biochemical markers are out of balance. Now, if you fix these biochemical markers and you go to your medical doctor, they'll be like, what the heck? How did you do this? Did your doctor say that he's curing diabetes? No, he didn't say that. He just said he was reversing my glucose, my insulin. So that's the thing, that a lot of medicine is copywritten. So you can't treat cancer out unless you're medical. So you can go right over the border to Tijuana and you can treat cancer and cure it, and they're doing it, right? And you can say legally you cure cancer because the AMA doesn't have jurisdiction there. But even they're lying there because you don't ever cure cancer. Cancer is a proprietary name. What you do is you cure diseased tissues, you reverse diseased tissue, the body heals itself, whatever you never had cancer, right? Your body had an extremely deficient state and there had reality. So the biochemistry, Steve Jobs said this, when you can correctly and specifically identify a problem, you almost exactly have its solution. That's why I do so much testing, Todd. Simple. Is when you do all the testing, the body, the Holy Spirit, it doesn't speak English. It speaks biochemistry. I speak biochemistry. It speaks thermography, right? When it gives off heat signals, it's telling me where it's bringing its attention, right? I speak thermography. I speak radiography. I speak ultrasonography. I can speak MRI, right? I speak all these languages. So the body doesn't speak English. Otherwise, it would tell you what to do. The spirit's condemned to know English. The ego talking to you all the time, the devil on your shoulder, they're both your friend, but one can talk to you, one can't. You got to learn to satisfy the ego. That's why I do so much testing, is when I put my hands over somebody's spine, I don't want to be thinking about, am I on the right side or not? I'm like, hell yeah, I did an x-ray, a thermal, biofeedback. I know what I'm doing. I'm doing it with confidence. And I'm not doing it with bias because I'm not getting paid more to give you more adjustments. Right? Like, that's what insurance does. Oh, well, you get paid more they incentivize you to do more treatments. If you got more treatments, that means you're out of alignment more frequently. You're supposed to be holding. Holding is healing. Not getting an adjustment means you're in alignment. That's my job. So you pay me to be your doctor for a period of time. Like, that's all. That's the only way this transaction can work, right? Because if I need to see you 30, 80, 3 times, I don't know, like, come to my office as often as necessary. I'm going to check your nervous system using thermography on every visit so that I know if I need to do it or not. Insurance doesn't want to pay for it. I don't care. I've had to do the hard way my whole life. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I've had to fend for myself my whole life. I've gotten into trouble. My dad always said, you just want to learn the hard way, huh, son? And you know what? Now I started a protocol for doctors to learn the hard way. Why? So the next generation can do it the medium way. And then the next generation can do it a little easier because my ancestors did it the hardest way. I'm doing it the hard way. It ain't the hardest way, though. The hardest way is what Dr. Palmer had to do. The founder of chiropractic. The hardest way is what our ancestors had to do, what Jesus had to do. Dude had to literally walk, like, and spread the word, like literally. That's the hardest way. But teaching the hard way, well, why you should do blood work? I get calls from lab companies all the time. Now they know me. They go, Dr. Josh, are you sure you didn't make a mistake? You checked off all the boxes on all the labs for the patient that we do here in the office. And I said, yeah, I know. It sucks you don't have more. She's like, what do you mean? What's wrong with this person? And I said, really, this person's pretty healthy. But I want to make sure And well, you're the only doctor that does that. I was like, well, does it make any sense, Wanda? And her name was Wanda. Does it make any sense? Like, that doctors are sending you scripts for only 1 or 2 things? Would you like, your dealership for your car to just check 1 or 2 things before they sell you a car? No. You want them to check everything. Okay. And she's like, yeah, wait a minute. How come all doctors don't send full scripts? So now I done changed her within 5 minutes. She was mad at me because she got to do 22 vials of blood, right? And she's so like, why you send people to do that? And I'm like, look, you're making a lot of money. Be quiet. Your insurance is paying you guys $7,500 for that blood work. My nonprofit can get it done for $500, right? So I found ways around that. But now we were just breaking the mold. Now these centers, they know me. But they don't send me like a gift or a thank you. Made the labs around here $250,000 last year. They didn't say thank you, Dr. Josh, for the business. I don't even care. Because I do it because we got to do it. We got to do it. It's just what I need to do, So
I work with a naturopath. I think I mentioned earlier, the two of you are kind of kindred spirits. Before her, I didn't have proper labs ever. I had little bits and pieces, and I've been through quite a bit over the years. I've had 24 surgeries, 20 of them orthopedic, some broken bones, just stuff, a lot of stuff. I just wasn't put together all that well. Never did any of the regular medical folks really dive into the chemistry. Now, they could see that I had a joint that was bad, torn ligaments, whatever, and they would look just deep enough to work on the ligaments, but not deep enough to understand what was going on. In particular, why I was tearing things. Why would I have so many torn ligaments, torn cartilage, things like that? Until I started working with somebody who's more like you, willing to do the hard work. And now I get labs every quarter or so, because I've got enough stuff going on that I know I drift. And we see that in the labs. I drift, I change, and we've got to adjust my protocols. And I'm happy to do that. It's just that I should see that with every medical practitioner, a little deeper analysis.
I agree, Tom. Yeah, it's kind of a shame, which is why we do the platform that we do, is to empower more docs to do it. I got to lay down my sword and teach other people how to fight. Even though I'm such a good fighter on the front line, such a good doctor, I'm such a good doctor, right? My ego loves it, right? But it's not about me. It's about the power that made the body and its potential to heal your body. The science helps us to see what's getting in the way. And it's up to you to get what's in the way out of the way. And I don't argue, but I remind people all the time, if you just see what's in the way, you can probably solve the problem yourself. And you can go to school to find the knowledge, and you can Google, ChatGPT it all, go for it, or I could that would be the hardest way. I could just make it a little bit easier, by just
a lot easier.
organizing. And you said something special a couple of times about like nobody really put it together. It's because we've always been fooled into believing that knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. Organized knowledge is power. Henry Ford knew how to do that, right? He did that with the assembly line. The assembly line is more credit to Henry Ford because he was able to bring the best minds together, the best in their field, the best, lug nut turners, the best transmission specialists, the best engine specialists, best of pulse. He brought them together and we got them to work together. Imagine all of our airlines, if they came together to make one airline company, how efficient the airline company would be. Imagine if all the automakers came together, right? This is the mastermind, right? Why we bring men together, why doctors need to come together of different professions around one central idea, not how to fix the body. We're going to argue all day about drugs and surgery. I would argue that drugs probably work very well if the person's not dehydrated, if the person has good nutrition, if the person has all their vitamins and minerals. Maybe medication is God's gift to humanity, but it doesn't work in a body that's so toxic to begin with. Maybe. Right? So I'm not saying let's make friends with them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's fight them either. I'm just saying let's respect each other let's respect the plumber for what they do. Let's respect, the electrician for what they do. Let's respect the chiropractors for what they do. And once in a while you find an amorphous individual who really doesn't identify with a specific profession. I do identify with a specific gender though, but a specific profession because I'm a human being. I'm in the profession of happiness, y'all. And I'm a lover of the nervous system. I'm a partner with the Holy Spirit. I do my best to get out of its way. First, I use my ego to see what's in the way. And then I present to you a variety of holistic solutions based off of ancient, thousands of years of knowledge, fasting, liver cleansing, using salt water and olive oil or avocado oil, kidney cleansing, eating blueberries and raspberries in the morning with apple cider vinegar and lemon juice and baking soda, anti-inflammatory dieting, heavy metal chelators, phytoestrogens to heal the estrogen outcomes in the body, dry brushing, hyperbaric chamber, salt room, sauna. You mentioned we have some of these things. I developed the world's first salt circulation technique, as far as I know. So I'm not. Hey, somebody,
What is that?
1,000 people come out of the woodworks. Yeah, so it's a way where we compound a salt room, grounding, hyperbaric therapy, and sauna. And we're using basically salt, electricity, oxygen, and heat to heal the body. Now, this is what we're doing. We're circulating salt. So you spend 30 to 60 minutes. This cycle can go 3 to 5 hours depending on how you want to cycle it. So let's say you spend 20 to 30 minutes in the salt room. So you spend 30 minutes in the salt room getting micro salt into the lungs. That's getting past the blood-brain barrier. That acts as like a saline therapy, right? And then after that therapy, you go and you lie down on the grounding mat. I have high volt PEMF, and that accelerates the mitochondrial activity in the body and the ATP by 200%. We have you lay down for about 15 minutes on the grounding, and that opens up the mitochondrial activity, which helps to circulate the salt that you just inhaled for 30 minutes. You can do one of two things. Sometimes I will have people go get a massage after this to circulate the salt manually. If the massage is not available, I have them get into the hyperbaric chamber for 90 minutes, 60 minutes if they're pressed for time, to get oxygen into that mitochondria that we just hyperactivated, right? So the research behind mitochondrial activity with PEMF is astronomical by itself, 200 to 500% increase. Oxygen is the same. So when you compound the effect of both of those things, you're accelerating the mitochondrial activity to do what? Circulate oxygen, yeah, but also circulate salt, which helps neutralize ions and pH. And the grounding increases pH and alkalinity, the potential hydrogen in your body. At the end, when you get out of the oxygen chamber, you're about 2.5 hours in. You stay as long as you can in the sauna. Now, what that does is it takes all the blood that you had internally and it starts to bring it out to the surface. So my hope is by about that 3-hour mark, the salt that you inhaled has circulated through your body and is now being pulled out through heat, right? Salt circulation technique. And you're inhaling the salt through the lungs, through the barriers, getting into the capillaries, into the mitochondria, accelerating the activity using PEMF and hyperbaric oxygen, which have their own separate benefits. And then getting into the sauna, which has a multitude of benefits. But the main thing is to open up the pores and to start pulling that salt. Now, all the blood that was inside with the oxygen and everything, it's about to be pulled like a string all the way from your core outward, right? And that way there, we're bringing we're circulating all this salt and this oxygen and this alkalinity throughout your whole body. And so it's something great for people who, are jet lagged, who do a lot of traveling, who are extremely ill and need some, intense therapy, or just like as I say, a little like a true spa day that's healing from the inside, an internal spa day. I mean, if you pair that with the chiropractic adjustment and pick up a nutritious meal on the way out here at the office, I mean, that's a day of wellness. That could easily be a $500, service because of how much each of those modalities are worth. And we offer wellness plans where people can do those things unlimited. So you can run that cycle every day I'm open if
Maybe
you
I
want.
should move to Michigan. I'm gonna have
Or
to
you
rethink my location.
can build a salt room, get a grounding mat and a sauna, and run the therapy yourself. Run the cycle yourself.
Got the sauna, salt lamps, salt therapy nearby. My wife
Okay,
and
well, we can
granddaughter
get you a
came back.
Halo generator for about $5,000. I'll hook you up with the company, build a
All
room in your
right.
house, and
Then I
then
go by
get
the
a
H
nice,
spot.
good grounding mat. H-spot, you can find used online. They're good as long as they don't have any tears on it. Just get a mild chamber. I mean, all in, you're probably, if you had to buy everything, I'd tell you probably 30 grand, but you could probably get it all for 20 grand. Hyperbaric chamber,
20 grand is
probably.
a lot until you start looking at the cost of not being healthy.
Well, you
And
put
the
it on a
cost of
loan,
not
it's
being
like 600
healthy
bucks a month.
eventually will eclipse 20 grand.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just tell people they could pay me, or they can buy it themselves. And I always want to enable them to do that. The new venture I have alongside my uncle, and I'm just a consultant and the guru, is we're building healthy homes. So it's Healthy Homes by Henk, and my uncle's last name is Henk as well. So basically, I'm building a house right now, and I'm probably going to be the only house in Michigan, as far as I know, that's fully grounded. And so on the outside shell of my home and the ceiling, I have different gauges of copper to filter out different wavelengths and radio frequencies, and also to transmit the Earth's magnetic field back into the home if there's no excess that needs to go from my house back into the system. I could go through people's homes, and I go through my house, go through the office, show you electrical wires giving off EF frequencies 3 feet away, and people's bed is right by, a wire. So underneath the drywall, you need to have copper insulation, and that needs to be grounded, and then you're golden. So right now, I'm just between all the stuff that I'm doing, my brother, I'm putting copper shielding in my home before they do the drywall next week. So
I think that is brilliant, actually.
it is, right? And so you
Take
can,
therapy all day,
build
every
healthy
day.
homes for people.
I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of research behind EMF frequencies being harmful for our health, causing infertility, birth defects, leukemia, blood disorders. I mean, that's what goes back to the 80s. Now we have 100 times more exposure. And some would say 1,000 times more EF exposure, depending on where you live and what you do.
Well, it's constant. Right now, I'm sitting at the computer, 2 big monitors, multiple lights, some in front of me, some behind me, and then all the gadgets on the side, all the wiring that goes with it.
Yeah, and it can seem morbid, but honestly, Todd, our Father who art thou in heaven created us with the future in mind, right? Do you believe that? Do you believe that, I would say, for lack of a better term, God created us knowing the future?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? So do you think he forsaked us? He knew COVID-19 was coming. He put within you an intelligence to counteract that, assuming there was no interference to that intelligence. It's the same thing to EMF frequency. A new age of human beings are coming that have a higher resonance frequency. If your nervous system is happy and healthy, your electromagnetic field will get stronger, and we will experience an evolution in our consciousness because we had to have had those weights challenging us. For a period of time, we may get sickness, EMF sickness, but over a course of time, our frequency will learn how to elevate. That's essentially how evolution should work. Allopathic world out there, right? That's how it works, right? And that's not just how it works from evolutionary. It's a lot of adaptation. So there's a lot of hope and greatness. You got a crystal behind you. I have a crystal. That's a crystal, right? You got a crystal behind you?
Got a crystal amethyst there, a bunch of quartz
Yeah, I
over
got one
here,
over
more
there
on the
too,
shelf.
right? It's chilling right there. I got a nice quartz, right? So our Father did not forsake us, and I have people of religion, they're not into crystals. They think it's bad for them, but yet they're smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, what's going on there? I can't work with you, Dr. Josh. You talk about crystals,
Mm.
but I do want to stop smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, does the Bible need to have a chapter? Please, someone add a chapter about McDonald's and Sunday after worship. Please add it to the list.
Get it.
Right, right. So this is the fun that we like to have. And, I like to talk about, the eating happiness, being happy. That's what McDonald's calls it, a happy meal, right? Happy meal. Why? Because you're eating happiness. And there's an Ohio State University, they did a study with rabbits, and they wanted to feed them an unhealthy diet, a cholesterol and high sugar diet, and to see if they develop, diabetes and insulin resistance and all the diseases. And they did, of course. But there was a small population of these rabbits that did not. And they looked at these rabbits and they said, what was different? Well, these rabbits were hand fed. The other ones, where they just threw the food to them. Here you go, get out of here. Yeah. Right. These ones are hand fed and they were pet. Right. There was the same type of study they did with like rats where they would put them in the water to see how long it would take for them to drown. And then they like tread water for 15 minutes and then they die. Right. And that was like the experiment. But then they like, okay, let's save them at minute 14. Let's take them out, let them sit down for a couple minutes and put them back in there and see how long they go. And then the second time they put them back in the water, they actually swam for like 72 hours or like 3 days or something like that. Right. And so why? Why did that happen? It's because they had hope that someone was going to save them. Then they had proof. God had touched them. We saved them and we put them back in it. Right. That's what God does to us. But we have that. When we feel like someone's there to save us, that's why the whole concept of a savior is important, because it gives how it's supposed to live longer. It gives us something to hope for, live for. But hope is what I say is fleeting. Hope is motivation. Faith is inspiration. Faith is knowing. Hope is believing. Belief is rooted in doubt. I don't believe in God. I know God. You have to doubt something you believe in. So you can't believe in something that you know is true. You can't. You cannot. That's not how it works. Inspiration, motivation, hope, faith.
Hmm.
Right?
That
Hope
kind of
leads to
connects up
faith.
something I hadn't quite thought about. When I see my naturopath, the one that's into the labs. Her plan provides some of that grounding that I need.
Yes.
Eventually faith, knowing that I know something about the path we're on.
Faith comes from you actually succeeding on your path, right? It's like, oh, the power that made the body heals the body. As long as nothing's getting in the way, well, let's get out of the way, because I hope that works. But I'm still doubtful, even with all your science, Dr. Josh. Faith is when I put my hands on your body and your patient, and the body heals itself, and we're like, oh shit. I'm like, remember how I told you the power that made the body heals the body? I never told you the adjustment, or I heal the body. So I've confirmed my scientific hypothesis. I told you the power that made the body heals the body. You were doubtful of that hypothesis when you came in. I'm just testing that one theory. Does the power that made the body heal the body? That's what I believe, as long as nothing's getting in the way. So I'm like, shit, excuse my language, let's get what's in the way out of the way, and let's see if the power takes over, right? And sure enough, it does, just like gravity, every time.
Because we don't keep interfering, as long as we don't keep bad things, smoking that cigarette or whatever it is that's interfering.
Yeah, and we're human, Todd, you and I are sitting here, and we're human, like the things constantly interfere, but what we know is important, I teach the men in the retreats, is that the number one male quality is awareness, self-awareness. It's not, oh, he's a kind man, he's a soft, gentle man, or he's this manly man, oh, he says the right things. It's like, sometimes he's a jerk, but you know what? He humbles himself later, and it's like, you know what? I was a jerk earlier. You do not deserve that. Like, that's what a man does. That's a real man, because he was aware. He might have said something, he might have stole something one day, or he might have done something, lied to somebody, but you know what? He goes home and he's like, man, that wasn't right. Like, he might not even rectify it or admit it, but he goes home and he's like, geez, like he's aware. Like, oh, that wasn't I could have handled myself better. He doesn't go, I'm all, no. Well, if you're right, you're right. Yeah. But the old thing, you're always wrong when it comes to a woman. So she's always right. But the whole idea is awareness, right? And a man is just awareness. It's not being good or bad. Jesus was kind and gentle, but he went to war. He was ruthless too. We got to stop painting the picture of how Jesus walked the earth, man. And the people died in his name, literally. Blood, sweat, tears, ivory, all of it. Man, so we need to understand that as a man, we got to be kind and gentle, but we also got to be ruthless. And we can't be one or the other. We got to be able to, I would think of like a man, we need to sometimes have alpha, but that's like a radio station we play when we're with the boys, And then you drop your boys off and say, hey, I got to go get my honey from work. You put your wife on, you change the radio station, right? Right? You put a nice different station and you're like, I like this girl. I like, yeah, you can't be keeping the station on with her. So now she's like talking to you. Now you got to be like, oh, alpha, like you're talking with your boys. You got to be like, oh, honey, yeah. So you got to be, as a man, you got to go from alpha to sigma, right? And sigma is a mentality that happens from a trauma. But it's not a good or bad thing. It's just most men that are alpha, it's a trauma. Most men that are omega, it's a trauma. So we identify these brainwave states that our brain literally gets stuck in scientifically, and teach men how to change the radio stations so that when they pick up their kids, they don't have the same radio station that they listen to with their kids when they're riding on their enemies. You got to have Coco Melon on with your kids, but you can't have Coco Melon on when you're with your boys.
Nope.
You can't be out. You can't be the same way with your boys as you are with your kids. And so the men, permission to change your radio station. I give them permission. You can. You don't have to be alpha, beta, sigma, theta, zeta. You don't have to be these different. And you can be any radio station you want. You don't have to just like country. You can like hip hop, country, emo, every rock once in a while. You can have different identity, right? You can be you. You can be authentic. You can be freaking happy. And that's what I think it comes down to. And at the end of the day, I believe that the Lord healed people because I'll catch myself. I know, not believe. I know the Lord healed people, not just because of the word. In his presence, as they say, right? He walked into a room and everybody just healed. Why? Because he was vibrating at the highest frequency. And that frequency exists in all of us. We got the God frequency in us. And it's not till somebody who vibrates on that level that your presence, that comes into frequency. And I know how that works in science, because if you walk into a room full of pianos and you play one note on one piano, all of the piano strings vibrate because they're tuned to the frequency. That's also how UFOs work, but that's a different conversation. When you have a tuning of your frequency. You have to match that frequency and boom, you teleport to that area. You become that frequency. So my number one ingredient is to be myself, a high vibrating, happy individual. And the people around me just have to vibrate unless they're really resisting themselves. And I got to get the impurities and the distunings out. And then they're vibrating together. We're vibrating together. As human beings, we're not vibrating together, Todd. We've been taught to be separate, vibe separately. We need to vibe together, but in our own unique frequency. We all are at a different frequency. Be unique. Be unique. Your naturopath sounds like a great human being. I'm probably 432.265, and she's probably 432.26265. We're probably so damn close, but it was a little bit different.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's what they call it, humans. Hue means color. Man means manifestation. We are light, color manifested. Hue is light and color. We are color and light manifesting. We're not bones, like you said. Why do doctors look at my body and my ligaments alone? Because they look at the body like you're just this physical thing. You are a matter of function. And that's why I'm very happy to hear that you are having your blood tested in a matter of function, that you understand your blood moves like a river does, and it changes at different seasons. And there's different fish that flow at different times of the year. And your diet needs to change with the seasons and the availability of the food in your environment.
Amen.
Man, this is fun. I love talking to you. I feel like I'm doing all
This is a lot of fun. Hey, how would folks not in Michigan connect with you potentially for like the excursions down to Costa Rica or wherever you're having the retreat?
Yeah, we're going to be doing it. Probably we're actually planning it right now around June time. So that's probably when the next retreat's going to be. If you want to be a part of the men's retreat, just reach out directly to me. You can go to my social media. I'm mostly on Facebook. You can contact me on Instagram too. The handle is the same, at DRJ Henk. Dr. Josh Henk. Search me up. Just look for the guy with the beard and the long hair and a big smile.
Beard.
Yeah,
Well,
you can message me.
great present, by the way. We'll put all that in the show notes. But yeah,
Oh, yeah,
there's
thank
a
you.
lot of good information, especially on your Facebook site. A
Yeah.
ton of good information. So
Oh
I think
man, not
make me
enough. I feel like I could be there all day, man.
awesome. Well, I love to appreciate your time. We're gonna have to do it again. There's so much more to go into. I love what you're doing. I really like what my consultant a few years ago called the woo-woo stuff. Tried to tell me, don't go into the woo-woo stuff. And yet that is so impactful. The energy side, the spiritual side. So it's awesome.
That's where the great I am is. That's where the way is, and that's where the light is at, man.
Yep.
That's where it's at.
Wholeheartedly agree.
All right, Todd. I love you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Josh.